Hi, I'm Luka Stefanovic. I'm Senior Architecture Industry Specialist at Vectorworks, and you're watching Student Perspective.
Hi there, and thanks for tuning in to A Student's Perspective, the weekly series that connects students with designers, manufacturers, educators, industry professionals, and design media celebrities to hear their stories on just how they've gotten to where they are now. Through our conversations, we connect the past, present, and future of design to show just how much we can learn from each other to grow towards our fullest potential without prescribed limitations. Think of A Student's Perspective as a weekly design lecture series from the student's point of view. A Student's Perspective is a division of the nonprofit University Hall of Innovation, whose goals are to connect students with the design industry through design challenges and mentorship, and a collaboration with the Marywood University Interior Architecture Program in Scranton, Pennsylvania. All interviews can be found in their video format at www.astudentsperspective.tv. For more information or sponsorship inquiries, please contact universityhallofinnovation@gmail.com. Hello, and thank you for joining us again for another episode of A Student's Perspective. We are still at the Leicester School of Architecture, wrapping up the BIM in Leicester conference. My name is Stephen.
I'm Misbah.
And we are here at the end of the day. And would you want to introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your background?
Yeah, so my name is Luka Stefanovic, and I currently work at Vectorworks as a Senior Architecture Industry Specialist, which really means that with Vectorworks being a BIM software solution, so a design tool for architects, it really means that I deal with all matters architecture related at the company. My background is in architecture and in building engineering, and prior to this, I've worked as an architect, really in architectural practices, so doing relatively traditional architectural work.
Okay. And how long have you been with Vectorworks?
It's been 5 years a few months ago.
Okay.
So I've sort of passed that mark.
You passed that hurdle? Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. And so making that transition, how did that happen for you? Like going from working in traditional architecture into kind of an ancillary part of it?
Honestly, like I've got a message on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
That to this day I'm not sure why I responded to, because when I read that message, I was like, they must have sort of sent it to the wrong person, because that's not me. But I did respond, and every sort of next interaction that I had, sort of the next LinkedIn message, and then one call, then another call with the HR team over in US, where our company's headquartered, and then a few rounds of interviews over here in the UK. Every time that I had that next sort of step, every time it made more sense. And then I kind of started to understand what it was all about and what they wanted sort of me for, and what was I supposed to do in the company. So yeah, basically it just sort of it started off very, very kind of this is not what I've ever considered as a possible kind of career path for myself. But then it sort of, crystallized in a sense, and it sort of, 5 years later, I'm still here.
So it's interesting. Are the not knowing kind of company structure for things like this, but the other members of the company, are they former architects, being that it's an architecture kind of platform, or how many of them are practicing or have practiced?
Not that many. Actually, I mean, our company produces software, so we're an IT company. We're not an architectural company. Obviously, architects are our clients, our customers, so they buy the software that they need to design their buildings and to deliver their designs, and we sort of sell that software to them. So there is a need for our company to have that perspective and to understand what the needs and what the work of our customers is. And that's where sort of we come in, and my kind of team, and we don't sort of architecture is only a part of our business. We also have landscape architects, and we have entertainment industry, so things like, for example, stage design or concerts or theater production shows, and rigging, scenic design, lighting, that sort of thing when I say entertainment. So we have professionals that have used to work in the practice and in the field, like myself, but we're maybe, I don't know, up to 10, I think, in the company of more than 300. I think I'm not sure about the numbers, forgive me, but that's the kind of ballpark. Yeah. There's way more, software developers, programmers, salespeople, marketing people. So we're kind of not that many, which is an interesting position to be in as an architect in the company, sort of, because a lot of people in the company work with architects, but there's only a handful of people that sort of know the job. Right. And that sort of kind of makes you I don't know how to say, but like it makes you be almost responsible for like an industry outlook at the company, because sort of we are the ones that provide that kind of thing, and sort of are gauging where the industry is heading, saying this is an important industry trend and we should sort of devote resources or research, and we should maybe try and provide solutions for architects, as tools for architects, sustainability, for example, or for now AI is a hot topic and an industry trend. So it's an interesting kind of position to be in, I suppose, having left that traditional kind of pathway of a well-trodden path for architects, and stepped outside and still be connected to the industry, but sort of looking from the out, and sort of watching where that road takes you.
Yeah, I think it's very important to have someone involved who knows, who could use the product, because it's someone that develops it without knowing, okay, am I thinking that I'm making something that someone is going to use, versus being able to say, I know I'm making something that someone is going to be able to use because of X, Y, and Z. So I think that's very interesting. And
it's an interesting relationship that we have. Sort of, I don't know how to code anything, but I do know what an architect wants or needs, and then sort of between us and sort of people developing the actual software and coding and creating these tools, it's sort of it's a constant back and forth between us to sort of understand what the user requirements are, understand what's possible to do, and then try to optimize it to make it as sort of user friendly a tool for architects to use to sort of aid in their design, so they can basically, automate these design processes, and they can design freely.
What's the biggest challenge that you are currently facing in terms of how the software actually works? Because there might be certain things you want the software to do, but it's just you're just not getting to that point because you have to kind of go through certain hurdles to solve that challenge. Is there anything that is currently happening behind the scenes that you're working on?
Yeah, there's a lot of things always sort of going on behind the scenes, and to an extent, sort of you're always looking to the future. I mean, we're testing things that are still not out, but also when I speak to my colleagues that are sort of planning for the sort of future tools, they're in 2026. I'm sort of looking, in 2024, a little bit towards 2025. They're sort of looking way forward. So there's always a mix of things that we're working on that is on one side dedicated to improving the things that we have, because the program's been around for a long time, and sort of it needs maintenance like anything in around us. So some of the tools may have been developed a number of years ago and need updating, so you need to make sure that they sort of run smoothly, or that you provide them the platform to build upon them. Then you can introduce completely new workflows and new sort of things. We have a public roadmap, for example, on which people can sort of comment and vote and say, this is something that is important for us, and then we sort of take that into research and into development, and then into testing, and then into beta testing. And we have some of our users that are beta testers as well, and sort of sometimes it doesn't happen as fast as you would like it to happen. Sometimes I'm like, I want this. This is great. Like, I would love to have it as soon as possible. But then on the other hand, sort of when you start getting involved in this, you realize that there is a process behind it, because you can actually break things down. You can sort of fix one thing, but inadvertently break another thing. So there needs to be a process through which you test things, you make sure that things work as they should. It's a complex kind of ecosystem almost,
Just taking you back a bit to where you were a student.
Yeah.
I just kind of want to talk about your journey from that point leading on to working at Vectorworks.
Yeah.
So could you just talk us a bit?
Yeah, sure. So I'm from Serbia, and I've done sort of my bachelor's degree at the University of Belgrade in architecture. So pure architecture. And it's a three-year sort of undergrad degree, after which I've realized it was too... Well, I was lacking in sort of engineering subjects over there. So the way they teach sort of architecture, I was finding sort of a lack of, structural topics, things like building physics, sustainability, things which were a bit more on sort of engineering and analysis side of things. There was a lot of design and a lot of that kind of stuff, visualization, model making, which was all fine, but I felt like it was a bit disbalanced for me. And then I saw a course that sort of appealed to me. There was a sort of a mix between architecture and engineering, and I sort of applied to it. I didn't apply anywhere else really. I sort of liked this one and I went for it. I applied, but then I was like, whatever happens. And then I get a response, and I got in on a scholarship, and it was in Italy. It was in Milano, at Politecnico di Milano, which is a really, really good school. So I was like, okay, looks like I'm going to Italy to sort of study building engineering, which is a kind of, I suppose transcends that, or rides that line between architecture and engineering. And this is kind of what my colleagues were. Sort of half of us came from architectural backgrounds, but the other half came from actually engineering backgrounds. So we were there really to learn from each other. So I became half engineer, but I kept my sort of architectural half, whereas they became half architects and sort of kept their engineering sort of backgrounds. So we became like, I suppose professionals that could speak sort of with both worlds, in a sense, and that's how I've always felt, ever since. As I guess, when I'm with architects, they always see me as an engineer, and when I'm with engineers, they always see me as an architect. So I'm a bit of both. Well, yeah, I'm a bit of both and a bit of neither. So it's a nice place to be, I think, and I like it, because I've always sort of liked design on one side, but I've always sort of needed that kind of, especially sort of since I'm very interested in things like sustainability, and then at some point I also discovered BIM, and sort of then got very, very interested in sort of that, and at some point also realized I sort of get how data works inside these BIM models, and that's sort of how I got to where I am now, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that so what was missing from your architecture side filled in with engineering, and then now you're dealing with sort of the coding sort of part of it too. So I'm sure you're picking up moments of that, and so they look at you as an architect, and maybe at different points you're looked at on the other side, and you're like, wait, no, that's not exactly what I'm doing. But it seems like you have your hands in a lot of pots in and around the architectural kind of field, and I think that's an interesting way to be. I'm trying to think of how I want to phrase this, but if you were to have to pick one, or if you were to say, like, okay, where might you think that you would end up if it wasn't for the other things? Like, would you go back into architecture? Would you want to go more into the engineering side? Would you, like, what do you think that would be an alternate universe kind of?
I'm not sure I view it like that anymore. Mm-hmm. As I said, I think I'm sort of both at this point. I suppose my experience is on the architectural side. I've never worked as a sort of as an engineer, I guess, in an engineering company designing sort of structure. But I've always sort of worked as a more technically minded architect. But yeah, I don't sort of really see that as a kind of choice, I suppose. I'm more like, this is what I'm good at, and this is what interests me now, and sort of, yeah, if I had to sort of say top three things, those would be sustainability, that would be BIM, and that would probably be data within sort of architectural models, and sort of utilizing those. I guess that in short, the way to describe kind of what I'm doing in one sentence, I suppose, would be that I'm someone who tries to optimize architectural design processes and their workflows. So to sort of make the work of an architect as efficient as possible, so they can actually spend time designing rather than sort of doing manual, repetitive work, which can be done by a digital tool.
It's very fascinating that you transition from designing places and environments to going to designing a software. How did you find the transition?
In my mind, I'm still designing. I'm just designing different things. You know, I'm as I said, I'm designing a workflow. I designed the way, for example, that an architect will approach a carbon assessment, right? So we've a few years ago we realized that basically within a model in Vectorworks, a model of a building, you basically have everything you need, data-wise and sort of model-wise, to do a carbon assessment. And then sort of we set about to design a workflow in which you could take advantage of that model and the data inside it and produce a carbon calculation. So I've kind of designed that. I've sort of designed the way that an architect will sort of approach this, and sort of from input to output. So it's all still design, right? It's just different things. And don't get me wrong, like I do still get involved a little bit on sort of architectural projects, because as a BIM software provider, we sort of provide Vectorworks to a lot of architectural offices, and it's part of my job to sort of be in touch with them and to sort of work with them. So I occasionally get sort of asked to sort of take a look at, I don't know, this 50-story tower or this rear building extension, or, you know, they vary in size, they vary in scale, but it's nice to kind of still get involved from that point of view in sort of, and keep in touch with sort of traditional architectural work.
Yeah, what's really interesting is over the past couple of years, we've spoken to several people on the webcast who have left practice and have gone into tech or gone into business and things like that. And actually, the recently elected 2025 president of the American Institute of Architects works for Slack. She's in tech there, and I think it was amazing that she was elected as the president. We had her on shortly before the election, and she's a great person, and that people still were able to stand behind her and her ethos and what she sets forward for representing architecture and architects without having functioned as an architect for several years. I think was an interesting testament to who she is. But yeah, there's a lot of those moments of I think designers who when they make that jump, or when they make that switch, that tech or kind of the business side of things sort of becomes a a next moment, and it becomes that user experience kind of thing. So you're still crafting, you're still creating not a physical environment, but you're creating a something for someone else to interface with, I think.
Yeah. And I think to an extent, to be an architect means that you need to be sort of a bit of a jack of all trades. So you need to know, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of a lot of things in order to be able to sort of understand how a complex system like a building comes together. I'll compare with doctors. Forgive me, but I guess the analogy is like to be a specialist, like to be a cardiologist. You first need to understand how the entire body as a system works, right? And then you specialize, and then you focus on the heart, for example, or on, I don't know, the bones or radiology or something. But you need to first understand, and that's why the training takes so long. For doctors, it's much more complex and much more sort of, dealing with people rather than with buildings and building components, obviously. But I think the principle is similar, and let's face it, training for architects also takes ages to become a qualified sort of and chartered architect.
So thinking about kind of what the future might hold for Vectorworks or for the industry as a whole. I mean, I don't want to take on any trade secrets or anything, but what do you see maybe happening 10 years from now? What would you like to see happen? What do you think might be a development within the software or just within the idea of what BIM can do for the industry?
That's an interesting question. There's a lot of potential routes where this can go. Obviously, AI is now sort of the conversation in the industry probably. So we'll see where that goes. You can already sort of do things like just knock up a quick model, and then instead of rendering it, you ask AI to sort of generate an image based on your natural language input. So you provide that kind of geometry, and then basically it almost does the job of a renderer for you. It sort of greatly speeds those processes up. Then who knows where that can go. I've already seen some kind of prototypes of automating the entire sort of drawing package. For example, creating plans, generating the full set of drawings basically that are needed for like tender. And I've even heard.
Wouldn't that just take away the creative liberty of an artist? Because if we do say architects are actually artists, we are designing. If we have something that's getting everything done for us, wouldn't that just take away from that creativity and that process of having something conceptualized and then having something made? That whole process would just be removed by one prompt.
That's a big question, I suppose. I don't think it will sort of take away the job of architects. I think it will change it, but to an extent, all technology changes our jobs. The job of an architect is not the same like it was 10 years ago. It's not the same like it was 10 years ago. It wasn't the same like it was 20 years ago, and 20 years ago it wasn't like it was 30 years ago. So every kind of innovation, requires you to adapt to it. So, maybe the job of the architect evolves into sort of, less of producing drawings, more like controlling what AI has done, checking that everything is okay, and inputting and asking it what to do. So communicating with it. I don't have the answers. I don't know. I think it's a big conversation in the industry, and sort of there are opinions, ranging from we're all doomed to no, this is going to sort of disappear after a few years of popularity. So we'll see. But one of the things that coming back to sort of where I see BIM, and maybe this is my sort of my outlook, because it's a topic close to my heart, but I'd like to see sort of it enabling sort of more sustainable projects, because I think there is a sort of a platform there to sort of create more sustainable projects, and to approach just to use what you already have, because you create a BIM model so you can get that building built, so you can output plans and sections and elevations and schedules. That's why you're doing it. But then why not use it to run also some analysis to see whether you have enough daylighting, whether your energy performance is good, like how is your thermal comfort, what's the carbon footprint, what's the embodied carbon of that project, so you can do a lot of analysis, simulation. Like that model can tell you a lot of things, and you already have it. You've already got it. It's already there because you're using it for your sort of work that is your main kind of design process. If you can plug in sort of other processes into it, then I think it sort of is a value added to that work. Because so far, in a traditional sort of design process, those things are kind of separated and run in parallel. So in order to sort of do a sustainability analysis, you need to really jump out and sort of do it on the side, which then brings back questions of profitability, and whether it's worth doing. It's labor intensive, it's time consuming, and then a lot of people just don't do it. But then on a global scale, that means much less sort of sustainable projects. And sort of if we're serious about sort of reducing construction industry's emissions, then we need as many projects sort of being more sustainable, really.
Yeah, I think the more people talking about it now, the more likely the positives will develop in the future, of whether it is how AI affects everything, or how BIM can continue to affect the industry, and where it's being used and utilized and whatnot. I think so. Instead of looking forward, we're going to look backwards now, and we're going to ask, if you were to, knowing everything you do know now, if you were to go back and have a chance to talk to your student self, what's a piece of advice you might give yourself?
Okay. I suppose be a bit more confident in sort of in myself, really, and sort of because you know how it is when you're a student, you're starting out, you've got an idea or you want to do something, and then you're supposed to sort of tell that to somebody who's been in the industry for like 20-30 years, and you feel shy and scared and sort of not confident in yourself. Whereas I guess, looking back now, I suppose it's a bit sort of hard on yourself, because you might have a good idea, but I think it's also unfair to the person, because, for example, I found that I was, lucky or fortunate, to work with people that have sort of, were open and have listened to what I was suggesting, and have sort of supported me, encouraged me, and sort of had the confidence in me that I can actually see that through. And yeah, that's kind of the one thing that I think that I would sort of say to myself.
Yeah, no, I think it's important, and it's a lot of times people don't realize those types of things until after the fact, obviously. But
yeah.
Again, hopefully someone hearing this will take it upon themselves, or will think about their own situation, and kind of imagine kind of how they can sort of recraft their time in school. But
in hindsight, obviously.
But yeah, so thank you very much for sitting down with us. I'm glad we were able to make this happen today. I really appreciate it. And if any of you watching enjoyed this episode, please like, follow, and share. And if you have any comments, leave them for us on any of our social platforms. And make sure to tune in next week as the conversation continues from a student's perspective. We hope you liked this discussion with the design industry from a student's perspective. Please like, share, and comment, and stay tuned for more inspiring conversations to come.